back, guys, to another episode of Gym Goss. And this time we are missing one of our compadres, Sam. He's actually off playing golf, lucky SOB. But fortunately, in his place from JPS, we have Rockstar Refalo. Martin, welcome to Gym Goss.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is clearly all yours, believe me. But we do have Jackson back as per usual. Fortunately, he escaped, I dare say, a near-death experience over in Bali. No, he wasn't drunk on a motorcycle, guys, although that would have made for much better entertainment value. I would have loved the story. Well, yeah, I know you have had a similar experience or a bar fight. But Jackson, tell us what happened over in Bali. We know that you've just given us the full kit and caboodle, but give the listeners who are following along at home an update. What happened?
The rapid rundown was that I had a twist in my large intestine that, according to the doctors, happened spontaneously with no cause, and that caused me to not be able to move any food or liquids through my digestive tract. And over a matter of sort of a day and a half, my stomach and my gut just basically started exploding. And I was vomiting in incredible pain through my digestive tract. Couldn't eat or anything like that. Checked myself into the hospital. As you guys could probably imagine, the Bali hospital situations and dealings are not elite, but and I was getting my diagnosis in broken English, and things like, if blockage is not clear, we cut you open. Things like that were being said, so it was a little bit scary there for a moment, but luckily, due to the doctors putting tubes down my nose, through my throat, down into my digestive tract, we were able to clear the blockage over 12 hours, which was a pretty brutal process. As I was watching the contents of my gut slowly filter out from the tube down into a little plastic bag that was by my side. Wasn't able to basically eat, so I was basically all up, did a 3-day fast, just having liquids and IV nutrients, but managed to clear the blockage. I did lose 10 kilos in the space of 5 days. I think a combination of like the stress and the heavy medications I was getting, plus not being able to consume basically any protein or real calories for 3 days, plus the bed rest for another 2 days after that. I was looking and feeling pretty shitty on the other end of it, but to be fair, I was just happy that the problem was solved, to be honest. Sorry?
Puts things into perspective a little bit.
Yeah, like obviously I was like really down about my physique, but there was a moment like where I was contemplating getting sliced up in Bali by myself with no friends and family, and to be able to avoid that was, sort of, like you said, put things into perspective. And basically it's been about 6 weeks now since the incident. I've been able to get back to training. Was sort of a slow recovery process, and I've been able to get back to eating normally again. And now I feel like it's never happened. So it was shaky times there for a little while, but mended, and now sort of back to my best self, which is nice.
Well, we're very glad that you're okay, obviously. But yeah, I just really wonder what they would have done with the contents of your stomach when it came into that little plastic bag. I do have some sneaking suspicions that would have been repurposed.
It goes into those little back soap parts.
at the little blue plastic bags with a straw. $1 morning price.
That's it. They just wrap it and they stick a straw.
Oh shit! All right. Well, on to more pressing matters. Today we're going to be talking about evolving as a coach, guys. And for those of you who don't know Martin, which I'm sure most of you probably do, he's one of our head physique coaches at JPS. He's my right-hand man when it comes to physique contest preparation, and he's our education manager. So he basically teaches all of our coaches and is responsible for the continuing education, upskilling of them. So he's not only an exceptional coach, but he's a fantastic coacher of coaches. And we all know that Jackson is one of the best online coaches in the game at the moment. So we're going to be talking all about how they've evolved as a coach. And we're going to start off with Martin, because I know Martin's backstory a little bit, and I find it quite interesting as well as humorous. Obviously, I find a lot of things about Martin quite comical, but jokes aside, his experience is very common, I think, when a lot of coaches come into the fitness industry, and I think he has a lot to share there. So Martin, give us a basic overview of how you got into the industry in terms of qualifications and all that kind of jazz, as well as your initial roles in the fitness space.
Yeah, well, I appreciate those kind words, Jacob. You definitely know my backstory better than anyone else, likely. So yeah, I got into the fitness industry at quite a young age. So I started training at the age of 16. I was lucky enough to get a job at a gym at about 17, so working at a reception. So I guess you could say I entered the industry at that age. I was surrounded by many bodybuilders at the time. As an old school gym. And that is essentially how my passion for bodybuilding and for training flourished. It was just being around those types of people. And, when you surround yourself with, a type of individual, your mindset starts to change, your approach towards your training, your life starts to change. I went from, loving footy on the weekends to loving training at the gym on the weekends. And from there, I decided to take the next step forward and complete my fitness courses. So I actually completed my fitness courses, both Cert 3 and Cert 4, whilst I was at school. And that meant that after school, I was able to start applying for jobs. So again, right after school, I pretty much got a job as a personal trainer at Anytime Fitness. So local gym, commercial gym, and I was the only personal trainer there. So that's quite interesting, and I consider myself quite lucky, because I've heard of many individuals who work in commercial gyms that have a minimum of 20 personal trainers around. So I had quite a unique opportunity working on my own, and that meant that I could make the most of the clientele at the gym. But what I found was that I wasn't really receiving much support. I really wasn't receiving any support at all. And, the fact that I was by myself started to actually feel like a bit of a drawback, because I didn't really have anyone to bounce ideas off with. I didn't really have anyone to collaborate with, to speak about, speak to about personal training, about coaching, and how we can improve our services and get more clients, etc. So over time, I actually started seeing that as a drawback, being on my own. And eventually my career as a PT did start to slowly excel, and I picked up quite a decent number of clients, and I had quite an exceptional client base. And it got to the point though where I started to feel myself plateau as a coach. I wasn't seeing any progression. Looking back on it now, I can definitely see that there was a lack of progression. I was just doing the same things week in and week out, whilst I was studying at university as well. So I was undertaking an exercise science degree, and I started looking for other avenues of progression and other avenues of learning. And that's when I got into, and Jacob knows this all too well, I got into this kettlebell course that I'm not going to say I got sucked into it, but yes. It's quite easy. It's quite easy at a young age when you're looking for a novel learning experience that is supposed to take your career to the next level. It's quite easy to fall for the marketing, the advertising, etc. And I found myself paying a large sum of money to complete this master functional training course. And of course, I learned quite a bit throughout that process, but looking back on it, that money could have been best spent elsewhere. And the degree of applicability to my coaching was quite questionable, right? Because that's not the type of coaching that I actually wanted to be doing. Like, yeah, I can teach clients how to throw some kettlebells around, but now I know that there are so many other aspects of coaching that that have such a larger magnitude of effect on the client's results and progress. And of course, I didn't know that back then. And I consider myself very lucky, actually, to have come across JPS. Like, it was a matter of seeing and being exposed to ads on Facebook, numerous ads, over the course of weeks. And I started to realize that, hey, maybe JPS is a company I should actually look into. And, I went ahead with that. And I eventually was lucky enough to get an interview, get a job. Before I got the job, though, Jacob said that, it's likely a good idea I go ahead with the mentorship, and I do the mentorship, which was, back then it was face-to-face. So it was a face-to-face mentorship that Jacob conducted on a weekly basis for 12 weeks. Now it's all online. And I was at a bit of a crossroads where I was teeing up whether or not I should take the mentorship or continue on with my master functional trainer course, because I'd actually been offered some sort of internship with the functional training crew as well.
I remember, can I just interject, Martin? I remember
Yeah, go
at
for
the
it.
front desk at JPS, I had this chat with Martin about the mentorship, and he goes, "Oh, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I'm doing this kettlebell course." And I literally gave him the ultimatum and said, "Look, if you want to teach people how to lift kettlebells, I'm not going to stop you. But I think if you want to be a good coach, you do the mentorship." I said, "It's up to you. I'll see you later." And that's how I left that conversation. And I remember getting a phone call, I think, or it might have been a text message from you saying, "Yeah, I'm going to do the mentorship." So Martin's career could have taken a very different turn, guys.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said I consider myself, lucky, I guess, right place, right time. And yeah, I made the right choice at the end of the day and took the mentorship. Probably the best decision I've made in my life thus far. And that really did set me up, because like I said, at the time I was at uni doing an exercise science degree, but I wasn't really learning much about science itself. And I didn't really understand how science could be applied on the gym floor with clients. Like, yes, I was learning human physiology and, structural kinesiology or whatever it might be, and their, exercise science units, but I didn't really have an understanding of science from the ground up. And I think the mentorship enabled me to actually realize that, hey, this is what science is, and this is how we can use it. And that obviously helped with my university studies as well, because I was able to comprehend topics and information a little bit better and better apply it on the gym floor. And really, it just spurred my passion for science and, having a deeper understanding about how things work, and then, working out a way to apply those things on the gym floor. So, since then, I've finished my bachelor's degree, my master's, and now I'm on to my higher education studies. So I'm doing a PhD now. And I consider, the mentorship as that, I guess, first stepping stone. And, the first stepping stone to my, essentially, not just my coaching career, but my education pathway as well.
Well, that's very flattering. I've actually never heard you describe it like that, which is cool. I just remember the kettlebell stuff, and that cracks me up. But Jackson, with Martin's comprehensive review of his induction into the fitness industry, what did yours look like? Because I'd imagine yours was very different. You've never worked, from memory, at a big box gym or taken personal training sessions. So you came from academia, essentially, whilst always training and a bit of coaching on the side, into then online coaching. Very different sort of pathway, right?
Yeah. So my transition to coaching happened relatively unintentionally. When I finished school, I went, as a little bit of backstory, I didn't really know what I was going to do after school. but I was relatively gifted academically. So my logic said, well, just pick the university degree that's the hardest to get into. That's going to give you a decent starting point and then work out what you want to do later on. So the hardest university degree to get into from WA was veterinary studies. So I started my university pursuits in veterinary studies, which was fine. Like I like animals, and there's probably not big enough driver to put away 7 years of university studies towards it. But luckily enough, and this was a huge blessing for me, obviously I was an athlete at the time, and I trained, whether that was for football or rowing or things like that, but I never considered myself to have a career in that domain. I just saw myself as an athlete. But luckily enough, one of my elective units when I was doing veterinary studies was a sports science unit. And so you get like one class a week or for like an hour. It's very small, but pales in comparison to the workload of your core units. But I found that by about half a semester through, I was actually really looking forward to this one sports science unit compared to any of my other core units in veterinary studies. And I'm actually putting a hell of a lot more work into this sports science unit, which my performance in that really achieved nothing towards my like attainment of the degree, but I just love doing it. So I came to the end of my first semester and thought, I probably need to make a change here. And much to my parents' dismay, I informed them that I was going to be transitioning from a degree that required a 98 ATAR to now going into a degree that requires an 80 ATAR. And basically their son, who they saw is going to be the vet in the white coat, and they can tell all their friends has this fancy occupation, is now going to be either sweeping the floors of the gym or going to be a personal trainer. So they definitely did not see the vision that I sort of had at that point. Luckily, like mum was, no, don't, no. Sort of tried to drop the hammer. Dad was a little bit, he backs me in a little bit more. So he sort of said, listen, if this is what you want to do, then do it. And mum sort of got pushed to the wayside a little bit and didn't get a say in it. She was just very, very angry and wouldn't talk to me for a long period of time. But so I left, which was Murdoch University, to move to UWA to start a degree in double major in exercise science and sports science. Now, still at that point in time, never had any intentions of working one-on-one with clients or anything like that. To be fair, I had either passions to be an educator in the area or to work in pro sport. So like a high performance manager for like NFL, NBA, that was sort of what my end goal that I could foresee for myself. And so did quite well in the undergrad degrees, earned myself a scholarship to complete my honours degree, and that was exercise physiology, and that was a little bit more specialised. So really sort of dialing more down into how to optimise the performance of an athlete from not just a training perspective, but also from a nutritional perspective as well. So I started getting a pretty good handle on how we could make people bigger, faster, stronger, and leaner through manipulation of those two categories, basically. And my first introduction to coaching was basically I had a couple of friends who were getting ready for bodybuilding shows, natural bodybuilding shows. And I was sort of keeping tabs on their sort of progression and what they were doing, and they were showing me what they were doing. And I sort of said, listen, guys, I think I can probably do things a little bit better than what you guys are doing for yourselves here. And they said, oh, really? And then so I was like, let me just take the reins on for these last 8 weeks of prep year. And like, this was unpaid stuff. It was just me doing it for fun. So I changed their approaches for these to my mates, and they started getting in shape really, really quickly, and ended up doing really well in these shows and had a really strong finish to their contest prep. And I actually really enjoyed helping them do that. And I thought, geez, I could probably do this a little bit more. And I still didn't really see it as like a primary source of income or primary career path or anything like that. I thought maybe I could just do it as like a little side gig for a bit of fun. So I started reaching out to a few more people, and I wasn't asking for any money at this point. I was just completing my studies still at uni. And like I had a few side jobs, but nothing related to sports. I was like scooping ice cream or doing whatever. And so I started just reaching out to people like, listen, let me handle your diet for 8-12 weeks. I'm not asking for any money in return. I just ask that you sort of trust me and you follow the plan and give me a chance to see what I can do. And there was probably I think I reached out to 4 people, and 2 of them had really, really good results where like the week 0 and week 10 photos were like remarkable.
One of these, Dashy, or was he one of the first?
He was one of my friends that I helped for a prep. Yeah, so he definitely did help get my name out there a little bit. But yeah, there was a couple of these guys that had really drastic transformations, and they shared them on social media. And a couple of days later, I got like my first message from someone who I didn't know. I said, listen, do you reckon you could help me out with something like that? And I said, yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, you've got a bit of pulling power now. And that was sort of the first ever moment where I was able to ask for a little bit of reimbursement. And that sort of was the spark. And the thing that sort of got me off the ground was that initial sort of transformations that I did sort of free of pay, and the word of mouth that led from that. And when he was like, geez, like, you look good. Like, what do you do differently? And, oh, I've got this, my mate Jackson's been helping me out with diet. You should shoot him a message. And you get really good results for one person, and that can lead to 2 inquiries. And then you get a good result for those 2 people, and that can lead to 4 more inquiries. And it just sort of spiraled like that for me. And then I've been coaching for close to 4 years now, maybe even a little bit longer, I'm not sure. But now I've sort of got to the position where I'm able to select who I want to work with, and sort of turn away perhaps the people that I think aren't a good fit for me, or I don't really want to work with, or something like that, or don't have the work ethic that I want to work with. So yeah, it was sort of, I never really had the plan to be doing what I'm doing today. And even when I started doing sort of those small little online coaching gigs for a handful of people, I was starting my PhD at that point in time, and my complete intention was to stay in academia and work my way up to sort of tenure and be a professor at a university. And now that I've finished my PhD, I sort of had to sort of change my goals a little bit, because I came to the realization that, geez, I'm making more money than I could ever make as a professor. And the hours are completely flexible. I can choose my own hours and when I work them. I can choose who I want to work with. How about I just go all in on the coaching gig for the time being? And like, once you have a PhD, it doesn't expire, you know. And most of the people working in tenure and professor positions, they're sort of late 30s to 60s, really. So I just thought, why not just double down on the online coaching stuff for now? And the opportunity to go back into academia and work in the professor role is always going to be there. So yeah, it was definitely not my original intention to be doing what I am doing right now, but I'm extremely happy that things did turn out the way that they did.
That's very, very interesting story. And I think you highlight a lot of things that coaches should be paying attention to if they're just starting out, and that's the need to do free work when you're first getting into the industry to actually practice your skills, because you really have no right to charging people when you've never done it before. But then also just the power of word of mouth and social media these days, if you do good work. But not that anyone cares. I'll share my background, which is kind of in between, minus all of the academia. So I was very similar to Martin. I started coaching in person pretty much straight out of high school. And I was I was studying law, and I was playing VFL, which is like tier below Australian rules football.
At that point in time of your life, what was like your 5-year plan? Like, where did you see yourself in 5 years?
Okay, so at 18, after high school, I got into law because my dad's a lawyer and he has a couple of law firms. So I was going to do my undergraduate, graduate. I was going to go into the family business. So I studied law, did PT whilst I was working at a clothing retailer. I was flipping cars on the weekends. I was tennis coaching as well, while studying law, playing VFL. So I was doing a lot. Got to the third year of my 4-year undergraduate, and I'd started coaching at the health club around the corner from where I used to train growing up. And I started there. They wouldn't give me clients because all the other older PTs used to hate me because I was this young, bleached blonde hair, nose ring, punk in a stringer, with all these clients, and they didn't like that. So they wouldn't give me clients. So I had to really work hard to get my clientele. But I started taking spin classes, boxing classes, cleaning the spa, the treadmills. Swear to God, I did it all, man.
Sounds worse than kettlebells.
You with like the headsets on.
I did. I used to have the fucking headset. I used to have my own playlist with like Avicii levels, fucking Dead Mouse 5. Like I used to have
double time.
Hey, I had some ripper playlists, put it that way. But I looked like a muppet. I had the bike shorts on, and anyway, if only people could have seen me back then, they would have a good giggle. I can't help but laugh myself. But anyway, built up a pretty good client base. And one of my good mates from high school, he wanted to do PT as well. He'd done his certs and he didn't want to do his own thing. And he said, can I work with you under JPS? Because I had a Facebook page, JPS. That was all it was. This is back in like 2010. This is 11 years ago. And he's like, I said, yeah. So I gave him a handful of clients. I had clients, and we're both paying rent at Recreation. And then he was picking up golf balls. Can you just imagine Sam on a golf cart at a driving range picking up the golf balls? That was like Sam's first job. He didn't want to do that. He's like, I want to do PT as well. So he did his PT, and we're all training together, taking our clients at this health club, but we're paying $200 each rent a week. So that's $600.
Yeah.
Just for all of us to coach. And I said, can you do us a discount? Because there's 3 of us. We're getting pretty full. I had I had to drop off tennis coaching. I had to quit my retail job. I was, picking up. I was doing clients in the morning, go to uni, go to footy training. Days I wasn't doing footy training, I'd, be working PT like round the clock. And so was like Sam and Tom. When I wasn't there, they'd be taking clients. They said no. Again, they didn't really like me too much because we were young and, they just, I don't know, didn't like us. I can understand why now, to be honest. So we ended up, I said to the boys, I said, why don't we get our own place? I'll pay the rent. I'll buy the equipment, same setup. But instead of you guys paying them rent, you pay me rent. And they're like, yeah, sweet. So we did. And then we got another 4 coaches, and we were doing like 200 plus sessions out of this little shoebox that I was renting. We outgrew that. We had noise complaints for dropping barbells. We had, I had the council coming in nearly every week, slapping me $800 fines for music and dropping barbells and shit. And we're exceeding our capacity. We're allowed to have like 20 people in there. We used to have like 40. It's like a brothel. But anyway, it was great fun. Some of the best memories I have in my career of coaching there. Anyhow, and that's when I started mentoring coaches as well, funnily enough, because I had all these coaches come to me like, what are you doing? Like, can you teach me? Can I pay you for an hour? And I was just making shit up as I went. I'd sit down and be like, well, this is what I think you need to do. And I found I was doing it for like 3 or 4, and I was regurgitating the same shit every time. So I created a little course. It was like PowerPoint slides. I started doing it Tuesday, Thursday nights. And Martin, that's what he did for 2 12-week periods each year. And I did that for like 3 or 4 years before we then went online. Anyhow, we then moved to Airport West. We got more coaches. Then I got another facility in Port Melbourne, which we no longer have because I sold that one to look after the family. But we built that one up for 2 years. It did reasonably well. Now we do a lot of online stuff. And my experience into the industry has just been like, I don't know. I feel like it's not real sometimes. It's quite bizarre how it all happened. From the kid, like dead set, I was cleaning spas on a Friday afternoon. I used to fucking hate it because they give me all the shit jobs because I was the youngest one there, taking spin classes, hustling. I remember, Jackson, you'll piss yourself. So are you, man. I did a presentation on bodybuilding once at Recreation. I'd coached one competitor. I remember I was that nervous. I was shaking. I had to leave the room. Right. I swear to God, left the room because I was that nervous talking to like 20 people. Then and they would like all came in for free and stuff. And I look back on that now and it's just like it seems like a blur, like it didn't happen.
And how did that go down, bodybuilding at a health club?
Man, like I used to have a lot of interest in bodybuilding because no one did it back then.
Okay.
I was one of the first people that I knew that did bodybuilding. Like I did bodybuilding in 2012. Like no one did bodybuilding back then. Like Instagram had just become a thing. You know what I mean? Like it just wasn't around. It was very taboo. It was like older guys, like gym rats. Like, you know, it wasn't something that young kids out of high school did. Like the juniors, there was bugger all juniors. There was no teenagers. Like, you know, the average, like the mean age of like a bodybuilder would have been like mid-30s. You know what I mean? It wasn't like now it's like 23, 24. You've got all these like young bucks who are like yoked. It wasn't like that. So it was very niche, which I think worked to my advantage. I think it was like very lucky timing wise. I got in early. Like I've always been a bit of an early adopter with things just because I get bored for the most part and want to do something different and make things harder, more, you know, challenging, innovate a little bit. But yeah, very lucky in that sense. And here we are. But I wanted to talk to you guys about when you look back at when you first started. Jackson, you're probably not going to have as much of a, I guess, catalog of shit that you wish you never did to people because you had that undergraduate studies and then you did it the right way, essentially. Whereas I'm sure, Martin, you and I can look back and go, fuck, glad I do things differently now. So, Martin, what are some of the mistakes that you made or things you look back and think, what the hell was I doing to my clients?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot that comes to mind. I still remember the first session that I ever took. Right? Sorry?
Besides kettlebells.
Besides kettlebells, right. So yeah, the first session I ever took, like literally first client, first session, she ended up in the bathroom. I think, Jacob, I think you have a similar experience. I'm not sure, maybe you mentioned to me before, but this was literally my first time on the gym floor. I was obviously super nervous, like you could imagine, never taken a session before. You know, you're on display in front of all the other members. I think I made her do like a tri-set. So like maybe like squats, jump squats. I know they were included, and like there was something else. So, you know, high intensity circuit work. And she ended up in the bathroom, and I felt really bad after that session. I was disappointed. I still remember her being in the bathroom and me just kind of standing out on the gym floor on my phone, just kind of, you know, wondering whether or not I really had a future, honestly, in this industry, because it honestly broke me. Like I did not want that session to go that way, and it did. Like that was probably my worst nightmare. Like that was the one thing that I didn't want to have happen, and it happened. And yeah, looking back on it, I somehow found my feet after that and strung a few good sessions together, and that gave me the confidence I needed. But yeah, I guess looking back, like I still remember writing meal plans at a very young age for clients. And again, I hadn't really learned much about nutrition at university. So whether I was warranted to write these meal plans is obviously very questionable, not to mention it was, you know, well outside of my scope. And, you know, I don't think I even knew it was outside of my scope back then. I can't really remember if I was taught that writing meal plans was outside of my scope, you know, during my fitness courses. I still remember them being
For the record, guys, just to give you some reference point for what kind of state Martin was in at this point in his career. There is some footage online, YouTube somewhere. Timmy, if you can pull that up for people watching this, that'd be fantastic. Of Martin performing a leg press at the tender age of 15 in knee straps.
16.
16. What's that video titled, Martin?
Oh, it's like 16-year-old leg press and squat video or something.
It's titled 16-year-old leg presses 300 kilos, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got 300 something. Yeah, I don't know the exact title, but and I'm not sure if it'll really pop up in the search because it doesn't have many views, but I'm sure.
Jackson, I'll show you it. I've never laughed harder. So guys, this is where Martin's at. 16-year-old leg pressing 300 kilos in knee straps for YouTube videos, writing meal plans.
Yeah.
For 50-year-old women with 4 kids.
Yeah, like that is literally it. Couldn't have described it any better. But yeah, I guess looking back, there wasn't really any thought processes that went into what I was doing, as you could clearly see based on what Jacob mentioned. I think that's probably one of the things that has changed over time, is just the thought process that goes into writing, not just programs. I shouldn't say just writing programs, but just coaching in general. And I think one thing that has really helped me over the years, and more so recently, is realizing that because lots of coaches have this issue with bridging the gap between science and practice. That's this thing that everyone speaks about. How can we bridge this gap between science and practice? And this is something that I struggled to kind of comprehend in my earlier coaching years as well. Even after the mentorship, like how do I fill this gap? And I think part of the reason why I struggled to fill that gap, and why many people do, is because they operate on probably a very narrow definition of science. So lots of people equate science to just research, especially in the fitness industry. I think, Jacob, you've mentioned how many people aren't very scientifically literate in the industry. And so they hear about research, they hear the word science get thrown around as well, and they make this connection between, science equals research. And I think having a more kind of bottom-up understanding of what science is, and to me, bridging the gap between science and practice requires you not only to look at the research, but to just think logically, and to have a thought process, and to think about reasons for and reasons against. And this is how I've been able to build my bridge, I guess, between science and practice. And that's one major change for me over the past years, is understanding that yes, we need to be informed in our decisions, and we are informed through research. But there's a lot of other aspects of science here that also need to take place, and that's just simply thinking through things. That is also science. Having reasons for, having reasons against, looking at the evidence, and taking your time. I guess taking time out before putting something forth to a client, and making sure that there is some grounding for whatever it is that you're trying to implement, and even if it doesn't have maybe the grounding that you'd like in research, well, again, there's other aspects of science that need to be taken into account. And this is just simply something that I wasn't doing at a very young age, nor did I know how to do. And even in my earlier coaching stages at JPS, that was something that I struggled with. So I guess that's definitely one thing that kind of stands out to me, and that I try and teach students about these days, is trying not to operate on such a narrow definition of science, and looking at all these other aspects that can really help you bridge this gap, right? This gap between what people think is science and practice.
And would you say, Martin, that it's just a matter of having a system to work through when you're making decisions, and that's been the groundbreaking change in your coaching now, is just being more systematic?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely one thing that would stand out. Having a systematic, thought process behind trying to implement change in my clients, as opposed to implementing change for the sake of it. And, again, that's another trap that I think many coaches fall into. They have this new client who they're working with, and they need to implement change from the get-go, but sometimes things might not need to be changed. And I think the only way you can really come to a reliable and effective decision is to have a system in place. And this system, it's going to look different for everyone. I can't speak you through my system and expect it to work the exact same way it works for me for you. So I think this is something that can only come with time in the industry. It comes with experience. It comes with a better understanding of how we can use the tools that we have at our disposal. And one of those tools, is science, another is experience. And, there's obviously many more. And I guess to get to the point where you have your own system, when you get to the point where you have your own systematic process, you need to spend time in the industry. And this is obviously an issue in the personal training industry. It's people really don't spend that much time in the industry. I think the average tenure of a PT in the industry is anywhere between 6 to 12 months. And I don't think that's sufficient time to get to the point where you are confident in your own system. So I think, one of the first things that personal trainers or coaches need to actually focus on upon entering the industry is focusing on how they are going to stay in the game in the long run. Because if you can't stay in the game, then you're never going to get to the point where you're an elite coach. And this goes for working with clients as well. To get results with clients and to write up really effective results for clients, you need to keep them in the game. You need to retain them. And too often, coaches bypass that step. They think about writing the absolute best program possible from day one with a new client, but really you can't do that from day one with a new client because you don't know much about them. You're working off a questionnaire. I think coaches need to spend time thinking about how they are going to maximize their longevity in the industry and how they're going to retain clients for the longest time possible, because that's how you get good results, and that's how you write good programs, and that's how you learn to create your own systems, and that's how you learn to think, really. And you'll have a lot of coaches who don't spend too long in the industry, and they come out of the personal training industry with negative things to say about their experience and about the clients they've worked with, but really they never spent enough energy and enough thought into doing things that were going to keep them in the game for the long run and keep their clients around in the long run as well. So I think ensuring that you don't bypass that step and you are thinking with a broad perspective, and you do have things in place to ensure that you can maintain longevity. I think that's important. And just briefly, one of the things that I speak about to many of my students is the power of feedback in maintaining longevity as a coach. So, when you're a coach at, for example, commercial gym, you don't really have a boss telling you that you're doing a good job, right? No one really tells you that you're doing a good job. If you were working, when I was working at local KFC, my manager was telling me I was doing a great job, and that was confidence boosting. At Anytime Fitness, I didn't have that. So the only way you can get feedback is by doing a good job with your clients, because your clients are the ones that will give you feedback, and you'll feel more confident in your own processes, and that will make you want to do an even better job, and then you'll get even better feedback, and it's a positive feedback loop at that point. And to get this feedback, it's not so much, it doesn't really come down to your ability to write a program. It's more so your ability to care for a client and just simply pay attention to them, to listen to them. Even that alone can get you to the point where you receive some good feedback. That gives you a bit of a kick up the ass, and that will then give you the motivation you need to do an even better job with all your other clients and so forth. So I think that positive feedback loop is really important when it comes to coaching longevity. And if you can't find that in the early stages, how do you get to the point where you're actually building your own systems and your own strategies and actually learning how to think about all things, I guess, coaching? So I guess those are definitely some things that stand out throughout my experience as a coach.
Did you want me to repeat the question for you, man? I'm just kidding.
What was the question?
I'm taking
Well, that
it.
was
No,
the systems.
No, the question was a mistake you
Yeah.
made. You answered.
Yeah.
You didn't just answer the question. You provide a lot of very useful insight for up and coming coaches. But I also love when you swear. You said "ass" in there, and I love when you say that. No, but Martin has done an exceptional job. Something I did mention earlier is that he basically teaches the Cert 3 and 4 at JPS now. So he's working with a lot of up and coming coaches. So very much finger on the pulse when it comes to these sorts of things as it relates to coach development, which is why we have him on today. Peacock, what are things that you have done that you just cringe at?
Well, I'm quite lucky that the things that I cringe at
Besides like dyeing your hair blonde, neck
only
tattoos.
only really impacted me and not sort of any of the people that I was working with or whatnot. Because I guess that my blessing was that I started coaching very late. So by the time that I first even asked to help someone with diet, and that was unpaid stuff, I'd already been lifting weights and consuming my own education on the side. Plus, I'd already done more than 3 years of tertiary education in sports science and exercise and health. So that allowed me to have already filtered out a lot of the bullshit. But that's not to say that I didn't myself do a lot of dumb shit leading up to that, because I didn't have the knowledge at that point. So for me, from like 16 to 23, of course, I did a lot of dumb shit with my nutrition and my diet, with my nutrition and my training, because I didn't have the knowledge. But when that first sort of client that I worked with at the end of 23, just before I was 24, I'd sort of been able to clean up a lot of that, or develop that knowledge base, and filter out a lot of that, sort of the BCAs and the fasted training and the fasted cardio, all those things, all the weird sort of voodoo shit that I was playing with doing to myself, and like the I guess my education at that point in time would have been like Flex magazine level education, and nothing more than that. So I'm glad to say that there's really not been anything that I've done to a client that I look back and say, oh fuck, like I wish I knew more at that point in time, because that was the bad call. Like, yes, there's been some like small calls along the way where you look back and say, okay, maybe I shouldn't have loaded him that hard, and maybe I should have been a little bit more conservative. Or on the flip side, he came in flat, maybe I should have pushed through a little bit higher. Little things like that, but no real like blatant like mistakes where it's like you should have been better there, you should have known that. So that was lucky, and I think that only comes from going into coaching at the right time, when you've actually paid your dues, because I think a lot of people do get caught in the trap these days of they stumble across JPS, or they've been following 3DMJ for like a year, and they think, oh, it's time for me to start coaching. And like, I don't care how much content you've been consuming in 12 months, that's not going to give you the adequate tools to be a coach. It's just going to take more time than that. And I think a lot of people see the draw card of coaching and like the flexible hours and all those sort of positives that we know that come with coaching, but they're not willing to sort of put in the legwork that is required to actually be an effective coach.
Yeah, I echo all of those sentiments. And I think you are probably a perfect example of how people should probably go about entering the industry, excuse me, guys, as a coach. And that is putting the legwork personally, from an education standpoint, doing the free work with friends and family. If there was a model for developing coaches, that'd be it, in my opinion.
And like just as a side tangent, like you know this, Jacob, but like I was paying my own way to UEBC, the first UEBC. Like,
yeah,
I was investing to learn, and there was, before I was a coach, before anyone knew me or anything like that. And then like fast forward, I'm getting invited to speak at that. So like, people just need to understand the timelines. Like you're not going to get those invites immediately. Like you're going to have to sort of invest a little bit before that can happen, you know?
Absolutely. And I think the quick fix nature of people wanting to be an effective coach almost aligns perfectly with many clients' desire for a quick fix in the fitness industry. The fitness industry on both ends of the spectrum, client and coach, it's all a quick fix, and people don't have to pay their dues because they can get their certs very quickly, and they can start working without much effort, and that sort of perpetuates this whole feedback loop of quick fix, results tomorrow sort of mentality that clients have. But I think I'm similar to Martin. I did a lot of stuff that was probably harmful to my clients that I regret deeply. And I think that came down to a couple of things. It was just seeing fitness as a very urgent and pertinent aspect of life. And that I had to get results in this session, and that if this meal I was going to eat was going to make or break my results. And having a very myopic, short-term perspective on all things fitness. Like every workout was make or break. Every meal would either build muscle or, make me lose muscle or lose fat, gain fat, all that kind of stuff. And that led me to doing some pretty drastic stuff, taking those extreme drastic measures with clients. And they're the things I look back on and think, why did I do that? But at the end of the day, I think it fundamentally came down to that short-term perspective, as opposed to playing the long game, as we've spoken about, and thinking long-term, because fitness and any adaptation or progress in any area takes time. So that's certainly, something that I look back on. But shit, some of the dumb stuff I used to do, far out, low-carb diets, the amount of training volume that I used to put my clients through, holy tits. It was like, there would have been like 30 sets for chest in a single session sometimes. Like I look back at that and I'm like, wow, I flogged horses and those horses died and I kept flogging them.
But did they grow?
They got some results. They did. They did. Funnily enough, it still worked to a degree, and that's what's crazy about it, because it did work, but it's just, it could have been more efficient, more effective. And I could have probably saved a lot of people a lot of unnecessary pain and discomfort along the way.
And time.
And time. But yeah, that's all past me now, I think. I'm sure I'll look back in 10 years and be like, fuck, that was dumb. Why did I do that? But anyway, something I wanted to, we'll go rapid fire now, a couple of minutes each. How did you evolve as a coach, and what do you think was a catalyst to your growth? If you can just share that in a couple of minutes. We've obviously got pretty good understanding of all of that stuff, but we'll start with you, Marto. What do you think was the catalyst, and what did that lead to you changing, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one thing as being a catalyst, but I think Jackson touched on this earlier, and just simply paying your dues. The amount of time that I've put into trying to gain experience, studying. I'm sure you resonate with that, Jackson, and you do too, Jacob. I remember spending days with you, Jacob, at bodybuilding shows. Working with you, your clients, just observing, watching. The amount of time that I put into just shadowing in general before I got my job at JPS. And there's been countless days and countless hours spent reading, trying to improve my understanding. And all of this does go unseen, especially when you do start to advance as a coach, and you get to the point where you do have a good clientele and you can pick and choose who you work with, and you are sought out by people you don't know. All of the groundwork really does go unseen. And then you have these new coaches, these aspiring coaches come up to you and say, hey, I'm not sure how I'm going to make it. Like, what's your best piece of advice? How did you get to the point where you're at now? And it's a very simple answer, which some people aren't very fond of. It's simply paying your dues and doing the work that really no one seems to see, doing the work that doesn't really stand out, that it is in itself a catalyst. That's what allowed my passion to flourish. That's what provided me or helped, partially with improving my work ethic and my desire to help people to change, and my desire to know more. The more I learned, the more I wanted to know. Right, I only want to continue improving my knowledge, and I want to continue helping other people. So it just spurs on and on and on. And I guess that's, to me, that seems like a catalyst. It's just spending hours doing things, doing work that people don't see, but that, this work, it might not have an immediate kind of transfer on your coaching career, but by all means doesn't have a delayed, long-term effect. Compounds.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that work, it might not seem like that's the case. It might not seem like it's compounding, but when you do that work and you get to the end, even though there is no end, you can look back and you see how that compound effect has taken place. But of course, there is no end, and that's hopefully going to continue. But really, you do have to put a sufficient amount of time in first, so that you can see that effect take place, and that helps guide you further forward.
I like that answer, Marta. Very good. I'm sure that will
resonate. You don't really get the rapid fire concept, does he?
Yeah.
No,
sorry.
That's why we pay the big bucks. He always puts in a little bit more than required.
Yeah.
Over to you, Jack.
The catalyst for me was more so like a confidence thing. When I started coaching, I would put myself on a lower tier to like the Eric Helms, the Alberto Nunez, the Lane Nortons and things like that. And I never sort of put myself on the same sort of echelon as them. And when I would go through coaching, I would question myself a lot. And when making adjustments with clients, I would find myself sort of going back, consulting research and making sure that everything was like exactly precise and evidence-based. And I was doing the same things that like Eric would do in the situation and blah, blah, blah. And once I got to a point where I sort of been like, no, like, as much as these guys do, like trust yourself and back your knowledge base. That was when my coaching really took off. And coaching, I hate using the word intuition because it like tied in with intuitive eating and all that rubbish. But when I started trusting myself and using my intuition more, that's when I just found that sort of my coaching really took off, and the results for my clients just flowed sort of seamlessly.
I like that. And I think a better way to phrase coaching intuition is the coach's eye.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about it, like in a field sport, like football or something like that, like the coach has an eye. They have an eye to read the play, to know what decisions to make, to be able to know when and how to make the right call, all those sorts of things. And I think the same applies to coaching, although we have much more of a lag time in watching the outcome of our decisions manifest. So it's a very unique sport in that sense. So I think the coach's eye is something that requires a lot of confidence to actually hone in on. I think a lot of coaches have it, but if you're not confident to actually listen to it, you can miss out on a lot. So I like that. And I think for me, similar to Jackson, actually, it's a confidence thing, and it comes down to attention. So as when I started, the catalyst for my growth was when I started to pay attention to the things that I was doing, not what everyone else was doing, and being able to segment where and when I spent my time paying attention to outside stuff, whether it's what other coaches are doing, whether it's what the research says. So learning how to, I guess, disentangle my attention externally from internally at JPS, what we're doing, what I'm doing, where I want to go, what decisions I'm making, what's happening with my clients, not other clients that I could be getting or other people are coaching. When I started really dialing down my attention to the things that were within arm's reach of my control, that's when everything started to really take off, because I wasn't worried about what other people were doing. The clients I didn't have, the business that I wanted to be. It was just like, where am I now? What situations am I facing at this point? What's the best possible decision I can make? And it's similar to Jackson's, like having the confidence to do that. Because it's hard. A lot of people do have a very external locus of control, looking outside of their own life for various things, comparing, and it can stifle a lot of your potential. And I think being able to just narrow down on what's going on in your life, is hugely important. And as simple as it sounds, just like focus on your fucking clients. Focus on the clients you do have. If you pay attention to the clients you do have, you'll be a good coach 9 times out of 10. If you're not paying attention, then you won't retain them. You'll fuck up. You'll lose clients. You'll continue that cycle, and you won't actually fix anything. But if you pay attention, you'll become an effective problem solver, both with your clients, your coaching business, and if you have a larger coaching company or fitness enterprise, whatever the case might be. So yeah, that would be it for me. Not really rapid fire. Sorry. Not sorry. Martin doesn't give a fuck. He's like, do you want to talk more, guys? Like, I've got more to say.
I'm happy to keep going.
We better wrap up. We've all got plenty of things to do, and so do the people watching this. But hopefully everyone enjoyed this conversation. I think it was really useful for anyone who is a coach out there, or even a self-coach, people who are coaching themselves. I think this kind of discussion can be really useful if you can draw parallels between coaching other people and coaching yourself. Obviously, the industry stuff, not so much, but I think the tidbits at the end, very useful. And we'll chat to you all next time in another episode of Gym Goss. Thank you, Marto. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you.
See you guys.